It seems like the first thing to say is that I find that there's an interaction between the external and the internal. And so the first video was a video shot outdoors. So in context of that idea, it seemed like the next video would be kind of cool to do indoors. And there's an idea of compression in the audio field. So almost the indoors where there's not much landscape or there's not even much context is almost a compressing the moment. And that's a poetic idea as well, and so there's poetry involved. And if you get somebody's attention, then the question is, what do you say? And it seems almost a question that's behind that question, or maybe ahead of that question, is what's worth saying. I remember watching the film with my brother many years ago. And I don't remember if we saw it like in a theater together first, or if like he got the VHS tape and then we watched it together, but it was this movie called Hype. And there's a scene in it where Eddie Vedder's talking about somebody climbing to the top of the mountain having something to say, and then a tragedy would be if that person got to the top of the mountain and didn't say that thing. And it almost seems an inherent question to ask, well, if one gets to the top of the mountain, what is worth saying? If somebody was going to say something. And I'm a thinker, so there's always a thought going on. I think of the Malibu here. I think she idles at about 700 RPM, and I think I idle about 2,000 RPM. And that doesn't mean anything other than it's just the dang mind just spins all the time. So I've been thinking a lot lately about artistry. I saw a quick little snippet of a B.J. Armstrong interview the other day, and he was talking about he didn't think the artistry in basketball. I thought basketball today is missing its artistry. And I would have never thought to put it that way, but I was watching a old Chicago Bulls basketball game, Michael Jordan playing from years ago the other day as well, and there was just a different type of fluidity to the game back in the late 80s and the 90s. And I think often about watching Michael Jordan play. I know there's a conversation about that historically, and there's a conversation going on right now that kind of ebbs and flows in and out of the conversation at large. But watching Michael Jordan play as a kid, for example, or as a young adult, it's kind of like being around seeing Nirvana break. And I'm sure it's probably, like you think of those individuals and how they're talked about many years after the fact, and it was special to be there, but it was also not a big deal. And maybe that's kind of an element of artistry, is where there's like something really cool going on, but it's not a big deal because it almost seems to be right what will be going on right at the time. And I was thinking about that with Michael Jordan's playing. It was like, I think Dr. J probably was the smoothest the smoothest basketball player ever to exist. I don't know how you could play smoother than that. And it's almost like Michael Jordan's playing was just it took that smoothness and combined it with like a big guy on the inside mentality, and they were like the same. But it's as if Michael Jordan was just leaning up against the game of basketball, waiting for the gaps to open. And once they opened, he was like, I think Michael Jordan was through the gaps before Michael Jordan was through the gaps. His body had to catch up to the move being made sometimes, which was just beautiful to watch. And the thing about it, it was just beautiful to watch. You didn't have to analyze it. You know, like, we don't got to sit and think about this. We just got to sit back and watch this and enjoy this show. In a weird way, I mean, I guess sometimes better things are going, less there is to say. Other than just, wow, that was cool. But I don't know. That's it's not a different line of thought. It's one of those things that have been going out of my mind recently, is this. I guess it's the idea of presence, being present with the moment. I was listening to a classical music radio station the other day, not from the local area, online. Or it might have been locally. Either way, they were talking about a program, I think, in New York City where some classical artists were reaching out to communities that didn't have necessarily an opportunity to ever really engage with the idea that they might, you know, be in a symphony someday. And which it sounds great. And I was thinking about that it's good to help when you can, if you're in the place to help, and if you're at the time in life where it would be, you know, make sense. People in different phases of life at different times, which is great. You know, we don't all have to be at the same place at the same time. But I wasn't thinking this in a negative way. I was just thinking this as an extraction of an idea that, think of all the kids in the small towns across America that are never, you can't outreach that program everywhere. You can't say, let's go reach all the people that don't have this opportunity. And so in a weird way, the people that are getting that opportunity, you could say, are more fortunate than many, many other people. And I would think the answer is yes, they are, in a certain sense. They're fortunate to have this opportunity that cannot be mass produced. And yet, what's wrong with that? Why can't we be happy for people that have a chance to do something? And why do we have to filter everything through what opportunities I don't have or do have? It's like we're all children of God on some level if we're religious in nature. And we think God casts the seeds out to the field, and where we land is where we grow. And no matter where we land, we can have amazing, great lives. We don't all have to end up being an NBA star or a owner of some multinational computer company. I mean, how do you give every kid every opportunity that would ever be available to every human being on the planet? And if you don't give them every opportunity every human being's ever had, you've somehow, they were disadvantaged. Because if somebody came to my small town when I was a kid growing up there riding my BMX bike around and said, we need to put a mall. You don't know what it's like to live in a big city with a mall. I would maybe say we get a committee and run these people out of town. Like, it's okay not to have every opportunity. Matter of fact, it's not necessarily okay. It's like sometimes a good thing not to have every opportunity, isn't it? I mean, there's people in this world that just complain about anything, isn't there? They just want to, I about cussed. I think I did kind of cuss. We'll bleep that out. But I think I caught it in time. But I was watching something the other night on TV, like we all probably do. And in the modern day, you can press pause on things, which wasn't the case when I was a kid. And so I just felt I had to press pause because somebody said something cool. And I thought if we were at church, the preacher would just say, now everybody, let's just sit back and think about that for a second. But you can't do that on live television. You can't take that long pause. But sometimes it's just like something said was a thing that was good, and it's like, let's all just pass the plate around and sit and think about that one for a few moments. And the preacher's sitting up front saying, we can't smoke in church, but if we could, we'd say smoke them if you got them. And maybe that's the time when the preacher says, we're just going to take a moment and send this over to the choir director, and they're going to lead a song. They're going to sing us a song. We're going to sit back and just chew on that thing for a moment. But I don't think we want to live in a world where people are, where we're okay with somebody intentionally holding somebody else down. All right? I think that's the opening way to start that conversation. Now, the problem with that conversation is, I'm old enough, and people in your life that are your friends and your family, they play psychological games with you. We as human beings play so many psychological games with each other, I don't even think we know we're playing half of them. We just do it because it's like riding a Ferris wheel that's in motion, and we're just at the fair and playing games and stuff, and nothing wrong with being at the fair, but I'm saying, like, you know, so like, where are the limits of what we as a collective can do for each other? You don't have to get your heart broken, but meaning you don't have to fall in love, you don't have to go on dates and such. But if you're going to, there's a good chance I'm going to get your heart broken. How do we write a law that you can't get your heart broken? And if somebody came along and said they wanted to write that law, I think we want to say, no, 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 no. And maybe like Phil Jackson said in an interview about Michael Jordan, he was the one that he felt had a great ability to be present in the moment, to be right in the moment. And we sure do have a problem as a collective of being in the moment. Now, not we as individuals, because most of us spend most of our time in the moment. I don't know how many people are sitting on the factory floor right now looking at the clock saying, we're kind of stuck in the moment. We're going to be here until the whistle blows. Most of us live our lives inside the confine of limitations. Now, I don't think we want to live in a situation where people are actively trying to hold others down, but again, there's a desire to talk about being in college and being confronted with ideas, and there's an idea of being in college, and most college students know at some point you want to leave college and go be in the real world and stop thinking about all this stuff and talk about all this stuff and just get on with life. And most would say they're grateful for the time they got to go to school and think about these ideas and talk about these ideas, but they're also grateful they're not in school anymore and they're out living their life. I feel like the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years we've been stuck in this collective thing with all the podcasts and everything, where I think everybody just needs to go back to college, get it out of the system, and come back to the real world and we get on with things. And I think it's about sitting still. Sitting still together. We definitely need leaders, because I think certain aspect of leadership is just, if you're on a city bus, the leader of that bus is the bus driver. The bus driver knows the route, knows how to drive the bus. And if everybody on the bus is a bus driver and could drive the bus and get the bus on its route where it's got to go, or change directions if the bus needs to take directions, that might be the case, but nonetheless, there's somebody's backside that's sitting on that seat driving. That's their chair. Thinking about the American dream. I don't know how to develop that thought, but it's almost that idea that some aspect of the dream here in America is you can put the family in the car and say you're going to go on a trip out to California, and you ain't going to be halfway through Nebraska and have Boss Hogg and Roscoe Pico Train show up on and say, we're impounding every car in the state that doesn't have state plates. You can make plans. You can get a house. And 5 years from now, some group isn't going to start up in your town and just come take your house from you. Now, if you don't make the payments, that's another issue. But we're just talking, philosophically speaking, all things held equal. A person can make plans. I don't know how to develop that thought because it's... I think it's hard to be a leader. I think the hardest thing about leadership is leadership isn't about telling people where we're going, telling where they're going, telling people what to do. It's almost leadership is this, what are we trying to do? Okay. And leadership is helping us get there. Leadership's about roles. Common sense is not only about knowing some common logical things, but it's also understanding the limitations of common sense. Common sense locally, is awareness that, that's how we do this in this town, but that might not be how they do that in the next town. So when we get to the next town, we have to check things out and see how they do things. Get a common sense of a common place. And not all places are commonly held the same. Whatever that means poetically. It's an attempt at trying to be poetic, but ideas in the air. And I guess maybe it goes back around presence and B.J. Armstrong and Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls, and I was listening to Pearl Jam 10, the album 10 the other day, and I haven't listened to that for a long time. I've listened to the Avocado album, the self-titled album, and I've listened to Yield a couple times in the last year, but I haven't listened to 10 in a while. I was just listening to Jeff bass playing, and it just hit me in a way never before. And I was thinking, man, if there's an MVP for that album, it's Jeff Amen, because everybody does a great job. But, I mean, the character given to that album comes from his bass playing. And I just was listening to his playing the first couple songs, and I was like, he likes to kick the back wheels out, the skateboard out on number 3, on 3. He likes to kick the back wheels out. He likes to slide the back wheels out. And that's what I felt like I was hearing in his playing. And then I remembered about the same time just seeing interviews or something, but I think he is a skateboarder. And so that makes sense. And I was tickled by it, because it was like, that's what it felt like when I was listening to it. I felt like when he got to the 3, he just like kicked the back wheels out. And then let it hang on the 4, and then back to the 1. And then he does that a lot. And I don't know if he does that on the Avocado album or Yield. I think that was something that was early on. And it's just beautiful. It's like great. And I was listening to John Paul Jones playing a couple days later. Both great bass players, both like crucial elements of their band. And yet, when you listen to their playing comparatively, they're not even playing the same instrument almost. It's like, they're both bass players, but like they're not bass players. Like one's a bass player. Their playing has nothing in common. Even though it does, it's bass, it's playing the bass, it serves the songs in the same way, but like they have nothing in common yet, except for they're both all-stars, they're both great. And I was listening to Black, and then once he gets to Black, I felt like every 2 bars, I was watching a highlight reel of the Bulls on ESPN, because like every 2 bars, it's like the band comes down, sets up, the court spread, the ball goes to Jordan on the 4, there's a pause, the tongue comes out, and then on 1 and 2, Jeff either steps back or steps sideways on the 1 and 2, and on 3, he's gone. And yet it felt, and I had to give the analogy of the Bulls, because it was like everybody on the whole band is great. It's a 5-person band. Everybody playing great on that album. But it's like Jeff is the one that's the all-star, given the character to the play. And so I thought the Bulls was a good analogy, but it also had a certain heaviness to it, not just because it's the bass, because it's almost like his personality that made me think more of like seeing like a Sean Kemp play and move than a Michael Jordan. Because Michael Jordan, when he moved, there was just a space where somebody was, and then now they're gone. And like Jeff's playing, almost like you could tell he was moving through it, but he was smooth, but he was like, he's moving through this. And so that was almost like, I imagine like Seattle Sonics, maybe Jeff was watching some Sonics games the day before. I don't know. I mean that like in a respectful way, but and something about that is about us each getting to be our individual selves in the moment, being present with where we are, and it's not about whether anybody ever knows about it or not. It would be nice if we have a national day of like acknowledging the fact that every one of us has had a tough time. Like we don't got to compare notes, we don't got to give out blue ribbons. Just you're a human being, right? Okay, life's going to have some tough days. No matter what, we're all going to be held back by somebody and something. I heard somebody say something in an interview years ago, and maybe not like that long ago, 10 years ago, relatively. And I think they were talking about Tom Petty. They were saying anybody that ever makes it music, there was somebody that wasn't listening. Almost as if somebody that person cared about and wished was listening to what they were doing, whatever that may mean, wasn't. And it's as if every life has a void, and there's a certain kind of voids we almost want to collectively say, no, we can collectively end that void together, but I don't even know how to stab at this stuff, because it's there's this idea there are things in the world that are going on that are bad that we shouldn't accept. We should collectively say this isn't okay, and when it happens, we should take steps to, make the person that was victimized by something feel like, no, you ain't alone, and this is not acceptable. But no matter how good we get at that, and we get that dialed in, there's still just going to be human moments that are lonely. And there's really, to solve that problem, some problems to solve would be to take away the humanity of the experience. And, I'm sure I know Michael Jordan. I don't know this person. I assume he put a lot of time into playing basketball and his game and his craft, and a lot of heart and soul and dedication and love. And yet, if Michael Jordan grew up playing on a travel team and being in AAU and doing all that stuff, I'm pretty confident on some level of conversation he wouldn't be the player he was. And so that greatness came from a limitation finding a way. And then there's the question of God, and sometimes it's like, not everybody, we can't give everybody the opportunity to be the next Michael Jordan or even Michael Jordan, because only Michael Jordan was supposed to fill that role. That was God's plan for him, not for you. And so how do we, if somebody comes along and tells you that you should be given opportunity, I don't know, it feels like just sometimes people want to, these psychological games we play with each other. And I think some people, a friend of mine said this quite some time ago. This was almost 20 years ago in a conversation we were having. It was a brief conversation. It wasn't necessarily about this topic, but it was a passing as we were having a conversation. We passed through this, and they just said definitively, there are vultures in this world. And I just, I know that as an idea, but I don't interact with a lot of people in a certain way, or I don't give people access to my life in that way where there's going to be this vulture thing. Even though I'm sure some of the people I've given access to my life have chewed on in a way that if I understood what they were really doing, I would be really unacceptable of that. But it's hard to imagine. There's people out there that come and they say we come in peace, and they come with these ideas they want to get in your head, and they're just they're not trying to set you free. They're trying to be the one that leads you to your freedom. And there's something about developing that thought that I don't really want to develop, but I put it out there because I don't know what it means. But all that's about the internal. And the internal's not easy, and the internal's not hard. I just was thinking lately, I was born in 1974. So I kind of would like to put some kind of statute of limitations on my responsibility as a human being for anything that's happened on this planet before 1974. And I'm not sure if I can be held accountable for things come 1976 either. I was too. I was probably still wearing diapers. I'm not sure how much responsibility I have for what was going on in this world. And if you want to tell me there's something I didn't have, if I had, my life would be better, I don't really want to entertain. I don't have time for you. Because I don't got any problems with my past. My past is just fine, and I'm fine with it. And if I like a whiskey, and the people, that whiskey company's being run legit at this point in time, I don't care if 300 years ago the owners of that whiskey company were some evil people. I mean, really, don't waste my time. I didn't take your course in college. I didn't sign up to hear all the bull. I see, I've almost cussed there. But it's amazing how many people are trying to take control of our minds and our times. It's one thing to go to college and sign up to take some classes and learn some things and There's probably some things going to upset you when you start hearing about how the world works sometimes or has worked at times, and I think there's ways we should better that. But again, I think about religion a lot. I think about the blues a lot. I think about Albert King talking about laundromat blues, how he would go to work and the lady, his woman, would go to the laundromat, do the laundry, and have her girlfriend watch the laundry run off with another man. So he's going to get her a washer and dryer and put it at home and put it in the basement, and she ain't going to leave the house. And I think about that, and I think about religion, because, in religion there's an idea of adultery. It's a bad thing. But if you think back in the days when the churches were just starting, that was the main thing people went to in town. And when you think about everybody coming together in town, if every time somebody went to church, they walked away without a wife because the wife went off with another man, people stopped coming to church. So you can't have a church if we got adultery. Blues man knows that. And so it seems like some of the ideas we hold in religion are just things that allow for us to have society, and we can't have the benefits of society or even begin to work together and better ourselves if we can't come together. And when we come together, there's going to be times when people try to divide us, and that's the weird thing. If we want to hear what people have to say, I'm going to end on this, and I'm going to get out of this idea, but I was just thinking recently about what I've gained from growing up in the Catholic Church, and one of the things is we went to church and I didn't have to hear what everybody else in church thought about the Bible said, or thought their own personal views on religion or how I should be acting. And I know I'm not conveying that correctly, but because I have fond memories of going to church, but it was everybody checked their personal stuff at the door. And I know that didn't always happen because I could see different, psychological battles within the church, within the parishioners, because wherever you get human beings gathered, yes, as the Lord said, there were two or more gathered. But when there are two or more gathered, you have the potential for this butting ahead, see who's the alpha. When the one going around butting heads trying to prove they're alpha is like probably just whatever. I think that's something about the American dream is like, I know I said it before about being left alone, but it's not being left alone because you're not valued. It's more of like, hey, hands off. I'm not worried about the opportunities I had or didn't have. I'm just grateful for the ones I had. I don't know. That's probably the best way to end it. That's an aspect of the internal, is I don't know. And just because we're participating in a drama in the external world doesn't mean we're actually doing anything with our time. And it doesn't mean we've escaped and trying to deal with the question of, I don't know. So, that's a long diatribe about nothing. I'm glad we didn't have as many channels and sports shows and stuff about sports back when I was a kid. I think it gets to be a point where things get over-talked, and it's not the fault of the commentators or the sports writers. It's just a matter of where we're just in an age where I think we do this almost everything. Everything just gets talked to death. You turn on the radio in the morning, try to listen to some music going to work, and it's like just people talking. It's just... And here I am talking, but I'm not even sure what to say. But it's I'm glad I didn't have YouTube when I was a kid. I'm glad I didn't have cable, But I don't know. And that is the internal, isn't it? I don't know. So, probably doesn't seem like something to release, so it probably won't be released, but I felt compelled to just give it a try. If it seems like something to do, I'll put it out, and if that's the case, I hope you're doing all right. If you listen to this and took the time, I hope it served your life somehow in a positive way, and yeah, take care. I'm Mark Shields. I don't even know if that's who I am. I'm looking for the little thing that shuts the recorder off. I might just do it by hand, but yeah. MarkShieldsMusic.rocks, UnoMasRecords.online. I don't really want to say those things because it feels like a sales pitch at that point. It's not meant to be a sales pitch. It's just, again, this is the world we live in. I can see why, Pearl Jam puts out an album with an avocado, and Led Zeppelin puts out an album with no title on it. Because it's almost sometimes it's like it's about this thing.